Awesome. Our next event here is going to be lightning talks, which are my very favorite thing that we do on the main stage. These are 5-minute talks. Some of these speakers I have heard wrote these talks as recently as yesterday afternoon, so they're a little bit of controlled chaos and a lot of fun. Because of the tight time limit, as the speakers are giving their talks, I'm going to be keeping an eye on time. And once they get about 30 seconds from the end of their talk, I will walk up on stage. And at that point, I want you to start clapping quietly. And about 15 seconds before the end of their talk, I will gesture to you to start making your clapping louder and louder. And that is their key that it's time to wrap up if they haven't already. With that said, our first lightning talk is going to be a remote talk given by Jim.
Hello, this is Jim. I'm here to tell you that global domain names and email addresses are here. I would like to invite you to send me an email message to this email address. As you will notice, this email address is not in Latin script. It's actually in Devanagari and in Hindi language, but it works. You are welcome to send me an email. I monitor it. These are real. So email addresses and domain names are no longer limited to the Latin script. Basically, almost any language which can be represented in Unicode can now be used in domain names and email addresses, and those are up and running. Here are 3 examples. They're set up as test cases. You can bring them up as websites. You can send email to them, and a responder will respond. What we see here is Thai, simplified Chinese, and Arabic. Why do these internationalized domain names and email addresses matter? Most of the world uses a primary script other than Latin. And of the part of the world that uses Latin script as their primary writing system, about 75% of those people speak a language which uses more than just unaccented A through Z, 0 through 9. They use accents, they use other Latin letters beyond A through Z. And of course, it's easier to read and work in your primary script. And when you think about who's on the internet now, the people who can easily adapt to a second language are mostly on the internet. The next 1 billion internet users will mostly be people who find Latin script as a second language harder to use. But why does it matter here in Cascadia, in Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia? In Vancouver, 20% of the residents do not speak English or French as their primary language at home. So you can imagine that we might want to have email addresses in Gurmukhi for summer camps, or we might want to have addresses in Chinese advertising independent travel in British Columbia. And PyCascades is hosted on the traditional and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations, and they have their own writing systems for their own languages. Now, it's not my purpose to tell them what domain names they would like to have, but imagine if they could have domain names in .ca for Canada in their own writing systems. Or imagine if the Premier of Nunavut could have an email address in Canadian Aboriginal syllabics. So, this is the Python conference. What do you do to support global domain names and email addresses? 2 pieces of concrete advice. One is the standard libraries module encodings.idna processes URLs wrong. So instead use the PyPy module idna. Second, if you're using a clever regular expression to validate domain names or email addresses, you're probably doing it wrong. So there is a website, uasg.tech, which is a program to promote universal acceptance, handling of global names. And they have a bunch of technical documents, and I've given their ID numbers here. One good day to think about these things is 28th of March. that is Universal Acceptance Day. There will be events all over the world to promote acceptance of global domain names and email addresses. So thank you very much. I appreciate the organizers for allowing a remote talk.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jim. Up next, we have Wes.
All right, so round of applause. Who here uses Git? I'm going to be talking about Git a little bit. My name is Wes Lord. I freelance through a company, Fizzguard Labs. And if you want to follow along with this repo or play around with it yourself, it's available at GitHub /weslord/git demos. But basically what I've got here on the right-hand side is sort of refreshing view of the Git graph. It's all of the commits in this repo sort of laid out how they relate to each other, where the branches and merges are. And the Git graph really tells the story of the history of your Git repo. In this case, so let's walk through this story. It looks like this is a weird little app that adds up numbers, basically. And if we walk through the main branch, which are, let's see, this line here, so all of these commits, and then these commits, we've got adding, subtracting 24, adding 6, and then like a little bit of refactoring. Meanwhile, someone else on another branch the dozen branch, has realized that all of these are multiples of 12. So they've been trying to refactor it to use a dozen instead of the straight up numbers here. So they've been following along, but as they've been doing this, main has been adding more and more numbers, and they've been merging that in and trying to catch up. I hope that's sort of clear by these diagonal lines where main is getting merged into dozen. And finally, dozen is sort of caught up, has the end result here. In the dozen branch. And so it's time to merge these changes back into main. Now, the simplest and easiest way, and probably what everyone who uses Git should be familiar with, would be, hold on here, would be to merge it. That's going to be the sort of safest, the simplest. We git merge dozen. In this case, it's a simple fast forward because everything's been merged. Main has been merged into dozen already, so merging dozen back into main is no big deal. But the issue with this, and this where you fall down on the idea of like how much history to preserve versus how to edit it, is that when we merge, we bring in all of the intermediate commits from the dozen branch. We're preserving the entire story. And in this case, it's kind of a verbose story. It rambles around as dozen is trying to follow main. And so if you're looking back later and you're trying to understand the story, you have a lot of these dozen commits where they're basically just playing catch up. And it's not really an interesting story. It's up to you as a team to decide if that's valuable, storing that information or not. But if you're on a team that decides that they want to make things a little more concise, basically take these intermediate commits and condense them all down and into sort of one commit, which encapsulates the entire sort of refactoring and adding the dozen and replacing the numbers with the new function. You've got a couple of options. One of those is rebase. How many of you are familiar with rebase or have rebased? So rebase is kind of cool. If we check out dozen, We don't need main merge anymore. And we try and rebase dozen onto main. What we end up with in this case, because there's been a lot of back and forth and mutual changes, you end up with, it doesn't know how to do it automatically. Obviously, you can squash merges, but you can end up, especially if the branches have been running for a long time, with a lot of cleanup where you're basically replaying everything. So an alternative that is a little bit cleaner is git reset. So if you go git reset main, it actually moves the label there and preserves your workspace. So you can add that as one atomic commit. Thank you.
All right. Up next, we have Sam.
Sorry, this is not plugged in anymore. Any tips on getting this going? Thank you. All right. Hey, everyone. I'm Sam Edwards. I'm a solutions engineer at Posit, formerly known as RStudio, and we're an open source data science company. But today, I'm here to talk to you about one of my favorite Python libraries. It's Pydantic. So I'll jump to the notebook, and I want to give a quick demo of how I use Pydantic. So at its core, Pydantic is a data validation library. It allows you to take data, create Python classes out of it, and validate all the data. So let's start with a simple use case. So imagine I'm talking to an API. For my API, I get back a response like this. So it's a list of authors. Each author has some metadata and a list of books. So if I wanted to interact with this data in Python, I'm probably going to use the JSON module. So I'll load my data, and it gives me a nice Python dictionary like this, a bunch of keys and values, and I can explore this data like I would using a dictionary. So I can get the first author's name, or I can get their year of birth. So this is fine, but there's a few problems with this approach that I could end up happening. So one thing I'll point out is the year of birth is not consistent. So the first author, it's a string. So that could result in some errors down the line somewhere in my code. And the second one, it's an integer. So I don't have consistent data types. And the other thing that I don't like about this approach is it's a dictionary. So it can be really hard to refactor my code if I want to change the name of a field. And it can also, I don't get really good auto completion in editors. So enter Pydantic. So let's start with the same thing. I'm going to load my data. I'm going to load it as a dictionary again. Then next, I'm going to define my Pydantic models. So these should look pretty familiar to everyone. They're just like Python classes, except I'm inheriting from base model, and I'm adding type annotations. And what Pydantic does that's really special is it takes these type annotations, and then it automatically converts your data to the correct type. So I have a book, I have an author, which takes a list of books, and then I have my API response, which is a list of authors. So let's unpack my dictionary into the API response. I need to run the code above. Okay, and now I have a really nice nested object here with a list of authors and the books that they have. So why do I like this? Well, one thing, I get to access the data based on the attributes now. So I can say for author in data.authors, and I'm not using dictionary keys anymore. If I wanted to change the name of one of these fields, it'd be really easy to do so with the IDE's built-in tools. And then I can also, it's automatically corrected the types for me. So this is the original data. It's a string. That's not good. Now, Pydantic has automatically converted to an integer for me. And it's also going to give really good errors. So say I try and create a new book with the year 2000. Pydantic is going to tell me, hey, something's wrong with your book model. It's not a valid integer. So this is a really good error. It'll be easy for me to debug and find where things went wrong. And then Pydantic also has a rich ecosystem of tools that I can plug in. So built in, it lets me convert it to other data types to share with other libraries. For example, I can convert it into a data frame. Okay, the last thing, I called this Do Everything with Pydantic. I'm just going to show a few things you can do with Pydantic, but this is one of the things that got me into it was interacting with SQL. So I can interact with a SQL database using Pydantic models. So again, I define my models a little bit different. I have some extra metadata about the relationships because it's a SQL database. So let's define those. I'm going to create some fake data, so 2 authors and a list of books, which I'm assigning to the author. Let's take a look. It looks like a normal Pydantic model so far. And then I want to insert this into a database. So I actually created a brand new database right at the start of this. And then I'm going to insert each book into the database by looping through them. So I can query that database now. So it kind of looks like SQL, select book. I'm going to get all the books. And Pydantic makes the query to the database, gets me a list of books, it validates all the data, and then parses it into a nice Python object. I can access my data on attributes just like before. And I can also, this is where it gets really cool. So everything in SQL is a table, right? So I have my book table and my author table. I don't need to write those joins. I can just access the data like I would any normal Python object. So I can ask for the books, and then inside this context statement, I can ask for the book title, and I'm also going to ask for the book author, which is in a totally separate table. So I don't need to write this join. Pydantic, or a SQL model in this case, just figures it out for me. So I get back my book, I get the year of birth, and I get the book's name. So pretty cool. And then the last thing I'll show is you can even go the other way. So instead of asking for the book, the author, instead of asking the book and asking for the authors, I can ask for the author and then get the books back. And that's that. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks again, Sam. Next up, we have Tony.
Aw, thank you guys. That should be for the organizers, for like the privilege to be doing this, really. God. Oh man, I got those jitters. It feels good to be up here. Thank you guys so much. I'm waiting for the screen. Great. All right, let's rock. I'm excited. I'm Tony Fast, and I'm not here to talk about myself. What I am here to do is maybe give you a demo, but as I do that, I'm going to spend all of my time advocating for digital accessibility and the things and some crash course primers and language that y'all can take with you to your communities and use, to help other folks. So I'm going to fly through this. I hope you can tell already. This document is available on that Tony Fast website. I'll share the link later on. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk about W3C standards. We're going to talk about language, and we're going to see how we're going to talk about disability and how it affects us all. Great. Let's go here. So this is my presentation. I'm going to start. Oh, no. I'm already jittery and not doing it right. Okay, Whew. This is going awry, y'all. Damn it. I'm sorry. That was not nice. Okay, now we're back. All right. Shoot. Okay. Here's the presentation. Now we're here. All right. Lots of people are affected by disability. 1 in 6 of us, but in capitalism, more. These are World Health Organization statistics. Y'all can check them out. Disability affects us all at different times, in different ways, and if it doesn't affect us now, we live in a mass disabling event, and it might affect us in the future. So being aware of digital accessibility is a long-term security here. Please go and visit these sites and check out these links. I'm running through them. So I'm going to say WCAG, Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. There's 4 main ones. Your content should be perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. Read about it later. Number 2, don't rely on color. Read about these later. When you're making decisions on your products, on your documentation, read these guidelines and don't come up with your own new rules. Other people have, and this is inclusive to a lot more people. This is inclusive design. Alphabet soup. Web Accessibility Initiative. They're part of the W3C. They run a lot of the other programs I'm going to talk about. Web Content Accessibility Guidelines or specifications for what we should be doing. ARIA, Accessible Rich Internet Applications, is the standard that HTML uses. You'll see it. Don't remove it. And don't add it if you don't know what you're doing. ACT, Accessibility Conformance Testing. There's standards and ways to validate these things. Accessibility Object Model is something you can dump into right here, and where you have a DOM, the accessibility model has a tree, and you can start digging through and see everything that's inside of that tree there. There's a new initiative for cognitive accessibility, which brings me here, because I think Jupyter is a cognitive accessibility tool, and we should be treating it as such. There are ways that you can audit accessibility today on your sites and your products. DQ Labs is an open source project. IBM just dropped a new product called Equal Access. That came out last week. It was AXCon, which is run by the DQ community. It's the biggest accessibility conference. Tons of cool stuff happened last week. And Wave. So if I bop back over into here, you'll see somewhere over here. Yep, somewhere over here. I'm not going to keep going with this because I'm going to run out of time. Anyway, there are also extensions that you can have, and my screen is I'm in private mode, so you can't do this. So there are AX extensions, DQ extensions. Put these things in, run them, help people. In Jupyter, we just got our audits down to 0. Great, we build a floor. Awesome. All right, now we got to build more accessible spaces and content. Help me. There are ways. There's some links here and some communities and resources that you can look to for figuring out how to manually review accessibility. This is what happens when we build the floor. We can start figuring out how to give disabled people their time back for the past, loss of time. So read these things. Community events. We've run a community event that has gotten 12 people in a commit history in an hour by adding alt text to your documentation without Git. Talk to me about it. Let's do this together. Meet your screen reader. Other useful resources. Include disabled people. And this was a demo in Jupyter, and you didn't hate it.
Thank you so much, Tony. Next up, we have Mariatta.
Okay. All right. Oh, hold on. All right. Let's see if I'm doing this right. Hi. Hi. Yay. Okay. Technology. Hi, everyone. It's really great to see you all here today. I am here to tell you about another Python conference called PyCon US. By the way, my name is Mariatta. I'm one of the Python core developers, and I'm the chair of this year's PyCon US. PyCon US is the largest and the longest running Python conference in the world. This year, we are celebrating 20 years of PyCon, and I really would love for all of you to come and join us. This year's conference will take place in person in Salt Lake City and also online, and the dates are Wednesday, April 19 until Thursday, April 27, so that's like 10 days, it's long. And we have different pricing structure depending on your situations. If you scan this barcode, it will take you to our website where you can register and purchase your ticket. PyCon is a big event, it's a big conference, and we will have more than 1,000 people attending, and it spans many days. So I thought I'll share this as an overview of what's gonna happen at PyCon US. The tutorials and the summits are on the first 2 days. The main conference days are the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, April 21st to 23rd, and this is where we have all the talks and all the keynotes. Carol Willing, I know she's here at PyCascades. You might have seen her. You will actually get to listen to her keynote at PyCon US. Ned Batchelder, who is a maintainer of Coverage Py, and who I think he's doing a remote sprint with PyCascades tomorrow. Well, he will also be giving a keynote speech. You've met Brad Cannon, who is 1/5 of the Python Steering Council. At PyCon US, you will see all 5 of the Python Steering Council on the stage. And we also have Guido van Rossum, who I believe some of you have met, who's here. He will also be joining us as our special guest. And we do have travel grants to help you attend the conference. Anyone who needs it are encouraged to apply, although you notice the dates here are in the past. So unfortunately, the application for this year's travel grant has closed. It actually usually starts around 6 months before the conference. So it's too late now. However, you can apply for next year's travel grants, so you don't miss out on this opportunity. Follow our blogs or subscribe to the newsletter. Follow the PyCon account on Twitter and Mastodon so that you will be able to apply for this next year. Now you might be asking, like, why do you need to come to PyCon US? You know, attending PyCon US has really changed my life. Like literally, it was by attending PyCon, it inspires me to start giving talks. It inspires me to start becoming involved in the Python community, contributing to open source, contributing to Python. It really started me on the path to become a Python core developer, and it really elevated my career. It opens up a lot of opportunities, and I really, really want for all of you to have these kinds of opportunities too. Now, once at PyCon, go take some tutorials, listen to talks and keynotes, spend a day at the sprints. And one of the unique things you can do at PyCon that I really love doing is that you get to meet so many open source maintainers of the libraries, the packages that you use depend on in your work, in your life. You will get to see them and say thanks to them in person. And I'm sure you will have lots of fun at PyCon. Don't keep this to yourself. Tell your friends. Friends let their friends go to PyCon. So, and as a special celebration of 20 years of PyCon, I'm working to create a slideshow, and I really need your help, your participation. If you've been to PyCon before any year, I would love if you can share like a favorite memory, a photo or video, story, like go to this form, submit your memory. I'm really hoping to compile memories and stories spanning 20 years from everybody, like from people all over the world. And even if you've never been to PyCon before, you can still participate. You can share with me the one thing you're looking forward to be doing the most. So thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you at PyCon US. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mariatta. Next up, we have Robin.
Hey, the tech is going to take longer than the talk, so here we go. Okay, this is Yellowstone. So, explore the Yellowstone caldera on a virtual 14-day trip through the Yellowstone caldera. Get it? Caldera, caldera. Okay, go to robinrh.github.io. There are a number of puzzles. Each puzzle is based on a different Python programming technique or library. There are list comprehensions, tuples, date time, iter tools, regular expressions, zip, and turtle graphics. The puzzles are designed to take about 20 minutes or 20 lines of Python code. There's no timer, there's no competition, and you don't have to log in. Enjoy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Robin. Next up, we have Santiago.
No. Okay. Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Santiago Soler, and I'm going to present you Pooch, a friend to fetch your data files. So I'm a scientific researcher, and usually we find ourselves in the situation that we want to download data files from the web. And we want an easy solution with very simple code that would allow us to reuse those downloaded files. And it would be really nice if we can check if those files are corrupted or not, because our whole workflow depends on those files. So the solution I have for you today is Pooch. Pooch is an open source Python library that allows you to download files from the web through different protocols. It caches the files locally so you don't have to re-download them, saving time and bandwidth. And it also can check the integrity of those files while downloaded. So let's show you some examples on how you can use it. So let's say you have some website hosting a data file that you want to download, and you also know the hash of the file. So you can import Pooch and use the retrieve function, pass in the URL, the hash, and it will return, so it would download the file to the default cache folder of your OS and return the path to the file. So you can use it on any further step. You can tweak stuff, like for example, if you want to control where the file will be downloaded, you can just pass a custom path. And you can also use different protocols. So if you're having an FTP server in your basement, you can totally use Pooch to download files from it. Another neat thing we have is to be able to download files from services like Zenodo, Figshare, and Dataverse. They offer you the possibility to create repositories where you can store data. And they provide you a DOI for each repository. A DOI is a digital object identifier. So you can, by passing the DOI and the file name you want to download, you can just pass the DOI and the file name in the URL, and yeah, it will download it. A little bit more complex scenarios. So let's say you have a website that has a collection of files, right? And you want to be able to download some of them or all of them. So instead of using the retrieve function multiple times, which can be tedious, you can define a Pooch object. And you can do that by the create function. It will return a Pooch object, in this case, puppy. And it will require to pass the base URL where all the files are being hosted, and a registry, which is it is a dictionary containing the file names and their hashes. So once you create the object, you can just use the fetch method to grab any file you want. This is very useful for creating sample data sets for your packages, so your users can play around and learn how to use your package by downloading some sample data sets. Pooch has a very modular design. So, for example, you can define processors that perform some post-download actions. So, for example, if you want to unpack archives after they've been downloaded, you can totally do that, and you can define your own processors. And we have downloaders, so if you want to use some protocol that we don't support currently, you can totally write your own downloader. And also, you can write downloaders for interacting with any API that could be hosting your files. So feel free to plug your own classes. So Pooch right now is being used by SciPy, Scikit-learn, Xarray, Scikit-image, amongst others, basically to handle their sample data sets for running tutorials, gallery examples, all the documentation. So we are really happy to support the ecosystem with our solutions. So if you're interested in Pooch, just check the docs and start using it and join the conversation if you have some ideas that we can implement, and if you want to collaborate, we are open to collaborations. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Santiago. Next up, we have Andres.
Why this? Good morning. Let's see. Yes, it up. So, yeah, why not? Salsa in the morning. Why not? It's Sunday, right? So let's have some salsa. So we can have, are you having really fun conference? I hope you do. Because this morning I came to invite you to another conference. Why not? So my name is Andres. I am a senior developer, but I am also part of the real Python team, which is around here. Say hi if you see them. Hey, didn't see you over there. So my first questions, do you like good food? And do you enjoy a nice weather? Like the one that we had this weekend, but for some reason the slider is going green. I'm gonna try not to touch it a lot. And yeah, having problems. And what about knowing new people? Yes, gonna get one of those? Are you interested in knowing new people in different communities? So if any of those questions, if you say yes to any of those questions, I have exciting news for you. That in August, PyCon Latam, the Python conference in Latin America, is having the 4th edition. So the first time we did it in 2019, right before COVID. It was right at the beach. It was really nice, but then COVID came. It broke over the things that we were doing, and we had to go online, unfortunately. But this year, we're coming back, and in Mexico, Monterrey. Who are we? We are 5 individuals. You can see me there in the picture, the first time as a volunteer, and that we want to keep connecting communities and people that are looking to collaborate and everything you know about Python. That's what Python does, right? And that's what we're trying to do across Latin America. Why should you come to PyCon Latam? I have so many things in my mind, but food is one. I know I've been saying food many times. I love food. I'm a foodie. The weather, Mexico is a really nice place, and also you're gonna be part of the individuals that are helping getting Python outside of North America, going in other places in Latam. That's what we're looking for. Where can you find more information? Python Latam or English, and there is also the call for paper. So you can come as an individual, you can come as a speaker, you can come as a volunteer, you can come as a sponsor, but we want you to participate. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you in Mexico this year.
Awesome. That was our lightning talks for the day. Thanks so much to all of the speakers. Now we've got a little bit of break. We've now got a little bit of a break. Be back in this room at 9:55.